So, like, in film school, everybody doesn't like to admit that Citizen Kane is as good as they say. Yeah. So, like, you go in, because, like, when you take a film school course, like, that's AFI, it was, at the time, number one. Yeah. So, like, everyone scoffs at it when you're going into the intro class. They're like, there's a before Citizen Kane and an after Kane. Yeah. So, you kind of want to be like, no, that's not true at all. Uh-huh. Right? And you go into it and you're already kind of ticked off. But the older I get, the more I see. Like, sure, it can be boring at times. Mm-hmm. But I think Orson as this mythical figure is so tragic and beautiful in itself that it makes you appreciate Citizen Kane more.
No, I need to rewatch it. I think I've only seen it once or twice.
If you watch Mank...
Yeah, I watched Mank. I was going through David Fincher's filmography.
I loved Mank. And when you watch that, it brings a newer context because you realize that Orson was I love watching Orson Welles interviews because he's articulate, but he's also just so not vindictive.
Fat.
That's also like... just seeing it chimes at midnight. Yeah. You realize that all Orson was is Falstaff from the Shakespeare plays. So when you watch Chimes at Midnight, it has the worst audio you'll ever hear, but it's some of the most beautiful images. Okay. And realize, like, specifically at this time period, they weren't making stuff like that. I don't know. You read about, if you hear about, like, the Magnificent Ambersons and how the studio was so ticked off at him that they went behind his back to edit a new ending that he hated. That's just tragic. He could have. He is, but he could have been like the epitome of auteur cinema. Yeah. But he just had so many setbacks. One, because of his own ego, and two, because Hollywood is a dead end place.
I didn't watch it, but apparently they finished, at least on Netflix, a film he started.
Yeah, The Other Side of the Wind. Yeah. His editing is really interesting, the way that he cuts between dialogue. Yeah. Or you can see they're overdubbing someone. Yeah. It's so messy that it's almost brilliant to me. Oh, yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. You can just see it's so flawed. But Citizen Kane, like the whole story of someone losing their humanity while engrossing all of this wealth, and the more powerful they get.
Yeah. Well, it's based on William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah. And he tried so hard to crush it, and it pretty much worked. But Orson Welles, think about him a lot. Yeah. Have you ever seen the champagne commercial, the Paul Mess song?
Yeah, I think you sent it to me. Are we recording right now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
3 minutes in.
Oh shoot! I didn't know. Otherwise, I would have been a little more comical.
I haven't even cracked the surface of my Orson Welles appreciation.
Yeah.
You ready for this? It's gonna sound beautiful.
Let's watch it, guys. Is Beau gonna successfully open his Topo Chico? Oh, snap!
This is my personal bottle opener.
Yeah. If you can't see it, which nobody can except for me and Beau, it's a
Ace of Spades.
Bottle opener shaped like a playing card, specifically the Ace of Spades. Also,
Lemmy would be proud. Another one of my favorite kind of people. See, yours almost bobbled up.
Almost did.
I think I went the entire year without having a single issue.
I think that's true. Yeah. I gave you a lot of crap early on, but you've learned. You've honed your craft of bottle opening.
I should be a bottle opener. I can't open a bottle of wine. That's like my thing.
Really? Well, you could.
I break the cork like every time.
It's a shame.
It is. Yeah. Because my brother's a sommelier. Sommelier.
Yeah. I probably do it about once or twice a week, just because I work at a restaurant and serves wine.
Kind of got to. Well, hello. If you're still with us, thank you for your patience, because what a slog of a read we tackled.
Boom.
We have finished the Magic Mountain, ladies and gentlemen. We've climbed it. We've battled it. We went through hills and valleys.
But let me ask you this. Would you say it was magical?
I would say it's esoteric. I wouldn't say it's magical.
Okay.
Though, is it holy?
No.
Like Jodorowsky?
No.
No, I wouldn't either.
No.
That's too abstract.
Yeah. It definitely talked about holy things, but in and of itself, it was not holy.
Very secular. Would you agree, Goober?
Goober is Beau's cat.
Yeah, one of my kitties.
Who's eyeing me right now.
She's really close to me.
Yeah.
When I first started coming around, she didn't like me at all. And the feeling was mutual because I never owned cats. Mm-hmm. But now I'm like her person, I think.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it. I love growth like that.
Boom.
Just like our hero, Hans Castor.
Yes. But before we get into it, you want to start off with some statistics?
Let's do it.
Would you like to guess the number of downloads we've had?
Not a whole lot, probably.
Total downloads, 1,556. Not too shabby.
That's actually more than I thought.
Yeah. So, let's see. The top 4 countries we're listening in. Germany, probably because of your friend.
Yep.
China, we have 27.
All right.
Breaking into the commies.
Oh, barely.
Maybe President Xi is a big fan.
More steak happening.
And then Canada's 3rd place, 15.
Oh, Canada.
They do have a beautiful national anthem.
That's what I was telling Emma that. She goes, no.
And then, take a guess at the 4th highest country.
I'll go Tangier. I'm just going to pick something.
Tangier is not a country. Tangier is in Morocco.
Morocco, then.
No.
All right.
Nigeria.
Oh, you know what? I thought about saying, like, Nigeria.
No, sure you did.
I really did. I was going to say Somalia.
Yeah.
That's just like how
we did get one email.
Oh. Was it from...
No, it was an email from Substack.
Oh. What do they want?
Just announcing, like, new articles from their various people.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were we on there?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And then...
we're not sending Substack a baseball card.
No, we're not. Do you know what Substack is?
No.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So it's basically an online platform for a lot of, like, intellectual thinkers.
Oh.
So, like, a lot of people, for example, like Barry Weiss, who quit the New York Times,
yeah.
She's writing on there. A lot of influential journalists are going independent now and putting all their stuff on Substack instead of their former media posts.
Interessante.
Yeah, I thought you knew about that, but nope. Learn something new every day.
Yep.
I guess how many messages we got on X?
0.
Yep.
Got a few on Insta.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Yeah.
But nothing too crazy. Excuse me. What are you doing?
So yeah, it's been a few months since we did one. I think we did one. We know we did it after the school year started. So like September, October, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Which I think honestly, it's on par for our pattern.
It is, but I did promise a brief inquiry, and then
you did
right when I was like, I won't have a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
I got swamped.
Well, to be fair, I recommended doing it the next day when I was right there with you. So I'm equally to blame for that. But
come here.
So I do think this episode is going to be pretty long.
I do too.
It's a couple of reasons. One, it's the summary of it. We finished it. And then 2, the last episode, we're only 275 pages in. So this one is going to cover 441 pages. So
look at all my... I went through this yesterday, and I'm so glad I did because I also forgot to put my Post-its on.
Yeah.
Some quotes, and there's a lot of them that are connected. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a dense episode, folks, so we might as well just cut through the...
Yeah, which honestly, it tracks with the book. You know, if you're reading along with us, it's a very dense read, but going back and revisiting the stuff I'd underlined, it is a very magical book. Very, I guess maybe before we get into the details, what were your overall thoughts of it? Big picture.
Big picture? In retrospect, big picture. In terms of philosophy, in terms of its whole, like, tomeness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. Now, going up the mountain, terrible. As in, it was a hard process. Like, it was a difficult book. Only in terms of its subject matter and the way that it uses language to crack open things like Hegel. Like, Hegelian philosophy, like dialectics and crap, is already rough. Rough
trying to
understand. You can't get that. I mean, at least she's that close to it. If she hisses at you, just let me know.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of its philosophy and everything like that. I mean, it's just 10 pages. Getting through 10 pages of this was like my head was splitting open.
Yeah.
You know, as I was trying to be like, just give me 10 pages, and there'd be a paragraph of,
brilliance.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it was an amazing book.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely a slog, but I was listening to. Who did I listen to? I don't think it was not one of the videos you sent me. It was one of the ones on the side that was like recommended.
Yeah.
And the guy was saying, like, it pretty much represents life.
100%.
Like, there's going to be a lot of boring times. There's going to be a lot of exciting times. There's going to be a lot of deep things, a lot of shallow things.
Don't get me wrong. This is probably one of the best books I've read.
Yeah.
It's just...
there's a difference between being a great book and being your favorite book.
Right. It's something... Maybe I like it more than I think. I mean, I do. I like it.
Well, I think...
When I think about, like, how it manipulates time in and of itself is, like, Hans's time and the time as the reader.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I appreciate it, because it's something, like, you can't breeze through this. Like, I could get lost in reading sections of Infinite Jest or... like David Copperfield. I could knock out 100 pages in like 2 days.
I could not with Copperfield.
I could... Yeah, probably not.
Too many characters.
But with this one, it's...
Yeah.
It forces you to...
slow down.
Yeah, you're in that sanatorium. Like, welcome home.
Yeah.
You get that reference? Metallica?
No. I'm not a huge Metallica fan. And not that I dislike them, I just never really listened to much of them. I did go to their concert, though, a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's why I thought you were a big fan of them for some reason.
No, my buddy had an extra ticket, and he was in town, so... He's like, you want to go? I was like, yeah, sure.
Everything up to the Black Album is just pure brilliant. Everything after that, it's a shame. I'm going to need those notes there, Goobs.
Yeah. But no, overall, I thought it was an amazing novel, objectively. Did I enjoy reading it? Probably at times.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely didn't enjoy it like I enjoyed Infinite Jest.
No, yeah.
But as a work of art, I can 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe that's, when people say, when we judge any sort of medium of art, a lot of people want to put enjoyment as the top tier of the things they have to, put aside or, describe it as something that they can enjoy. Mm-hmm. Infinite Jest, like, it's an enjoying read.
And it's a great one. So
it's so active in its when you're reading it, you have to be active. This is, you need to slow down.
Well,
because it's so clinical.
Boom, that's the correct word. I mean, the word I was thinking of. Not that there's a right or wrong word. But no, it reminds me, do you listen to Club Brandon with Bill Maher?
No.
Anyways, he's a big music guy, and he's mentioned a couple times, like, he goes, I want to listen to music I like, like, I don't want a collection of the culturally important records, because if that's all you have, you're going to have a crappy record collection, It's kind of...
I feel like he's just gatekeeping.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, if you only read things that you really enjoy, it's like, chances are they're not going to be culturally relevant. Whereas we want to... I think that... I can't speak for you, but the goal of this podcast is to read things that were culturally significant at their time and continue to be, and kind of just analyze them.
Yeah. I feel like if Bill Maher and I were in the same room, it wouldn't be pretty. I just find him an angry drunk uncle.
Really?
Like the vibe. Yeah. He gets pissed off at the moon.
Yeah.
Like if it's not a full moon, he's just like, why are you waxing? I love the video of Bill Burr destroying him, where they're bantering back and forth, It's so funny.
See, I think. Well, it's the video I'm thinking of. I'm thinking Bill Burr lost that. So you and I are on opposite sides of that.
Bill Burr did not lose it. But hey, tomatoes.
Tomato. I think Bill Burr's an idiot. You think he's
so
great?
Funny. He's so.
I'm not talking about his comedy. I think when he talks about politics, he doesn't really know anything. But I know you and I are on opposite sides politically, so we'll let that slide.
Let it go.
All right, let's begin.
Go for it.
Well, I have 9 pages of quotes. So, you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Are you going to go for the quotes first?
Well, I think we'll probably just kind of weave them in.
That's fine. Come on, Goops.
So, I imagine...
She's not going to get up. You just start.
So, obviously, if you listen to our last episode, you'll know that I'm kind of the quote guy on here. So, basically, I just typed up all of the quotes that I... noted and just kind of categorize them into certain topics. So
wow, that's not what I did at all. Mine are going through chronologically when I found it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm not going to put one quote about something first and then come back to the same one.
I get you.
Okay. All right. So this first section, they're not in any particular order. It's about life.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Let's do it.
So this is a very clinical quote. It's naturally. And for the listener, like we've prefaced, it's going to be a long episode, long quotes, okay? Kind of Proustian, but they make sense. And we know what they're saying.
If you're driving in the car, please get out of the left lane.
And let's hope you're on a long road trip. It's going to be a long time. Yeah. All right, so it says... What then was life? It was warmth, the warmth generated by a form-preserving instability, a fever of matter, which accompanied the process of ceaseless decay and repair of albumin molecules that were too impossibly complicated, too impossibly ingenious a structure. It was the existence of the actually impossible to exist, of a half-sweet, half-painful balancing, or scarcely balancing, in this restricted and feverish process of decay and renewal upon the point of existence. It was not matter and it was not spirit, but something between the two, a phenomenon conveyed by matter, like the rainbow on the waterfall and like the flame. Yet why not material? It was sentient to the point of desire and disgust. The shamelessness of matter becomes sensible of itself, the incontinent form of being. It was a secret and ardent stirring in the frozen chastity of the universal. It was a stolen and voluptuous impurity of sucking and secreting, an exhalation of carbonic acid gas and material impurities of mysterious origin and composition. It was a pullulation and unfolding, a form-building, made possible by the overbalancing of its instability, yet controlled by the laws of growth inherent within it, of something brewed out of water, albumin, salt, and fats, which was called flesh, and which becomes form, beauty, a lofty image, and yet all the time the essence of sensuality and desire. For from this form and beauty were not spirit-born, nor, like the form and beauty of sculpture, conveyed by a neutral and spirit-consumed substance, which could in all purity make beauty perceptible to the senses. Rather was it conveyed and shaped by the somehow awakened voluptuousness of matter, of the organic, dying, living substance itself, the reeking flesh. Thoughts?
Well, it starts out quite Hegelian, you know?
Yeah, I mean...
about Hegel. It's one of those things where I'm not going to pretend like I can describe in layman's terms.
I think you can, though.
I can't. Not Hegel. No one can.
Yeah.
Maybe Marx, but...
I thought you were going to say that quote.
Oh, that? I mean... form and substance, man. Form and substance.
So, I mean, I think basically what it's getting at is it's...
anatomical stuff.
You know, we are both very scientific beings, and we're also non-scientific beings. We have material things to us, like matter, but we also have non-material, the spiritual side.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's the gist of this book.
Yeah.
This book... find a quote from something I read. Maybe I didn't write it down, but gist of it is that this whole book works in paradoxes.
Yeah.
Every character not only is a character of themselves, but they're a representation of two paradoxical views. So they're just there as a centerpiece for radical paradoxes.
Yeah.
And that's the gist of that quote is, scientifically, barons will break you down in terms of what you are as flesh.
Yeah.
But, a character like Settembrini is different. Or his, the other doctor. Not Adamanthus, but...
Barons?
No, not Barons, the other guy. The other one. There's two doctors.
Yeah, Barons and...
And... I don't know.
We should have done a research.
I know. But he will have lectures about love and how love is the...
Kurkowski.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's...
Dr. K.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, those are two polarizing views. You have a doctor talking about something that is so metaphysical and so, out there, and then you have somebody who's like technical. Like, you have a spot in your... I'm going to take this X-ray and I'm going to enjoy this, That's another thing, is that how this book is relative to time.
Yeah.
There's three instances, I should say, where technology is under a microscope, right? The first one is the X-ray. Yeah. First one's the X-ray.
Yeah.
And Hans keeps the X-ray of Claudia Chauchat in his pocket every day. That's something scientific. It's something groundbreaking at the time.
Because it was only 15, 20 years old in existence at the time.
And when Hans looks at it, he thinks of death when he sees it.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Because that's what he will look
I mean, if you can picture yourself not really knowing what an X-ray looks like and seeing it, it's kind of charcoal and white. It looks very death-like.
Yeah, 100%. Then you have... I'm going to skip. You have later on in the novel with the record player, a gramophone, I think.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with that, right? Manipulating time to the sense of the grooves and everything. And then you have earlier the pictures, moving pictures.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where my first quote is. I think it kind of leads to this.
Yeah.
And this is a very short quote, folks. The actors who had been cast in the play they had just seen had long since been scattered to the winds. They had watched only phantoms, whose deeds had been reduced to 1,000,000 photographs brought into focus for the briefest of moments, so that, as often as one liked, they could then be given back to the element of time as a series of blinking flashes.
Yeah.
When we break, movies down to its element,
so essentially it's a string of pictures.
Yeah, all it is like
that's all
nowadays
video
it's like 30
is.
frames per second.
Yeah.
Just pictures moving at a fast pace. But the pictures themselves are locked in time. It's only when we put it in a montage does it get life. Right? But that's not technically, right? They don't talk about it in terms like that. But when we look at these old actors, it astounds me when I watch something like Casablanca is one of my favorite movies. I'll put that on.
Did I ever show you the picture of the Casablanca bar in Vienna?
No.
No.
You should have, man.
Let me... you have your phone, yeah.
No. I don't know, like Humphrey Bogart in that movie. I mean, I just view that myself as him. But when I watched it, I realized that everyone in that picture is dead. Yeah. But yet they're trapped in time forever. But they're dead. That just breaks me when I think about it existentially.
Yeah, let me see if I can find this for you. I'll show it to you real quick. I'll hand you my phone once I find it. Oh, here you go.
Oh yeah, man.
I didn't actually go. I just walked by it. I'm going back next summer or this summer. I'm only gonna be there a day though, so maybe I'll visit it.
Gosh, Casablanca! We can do a whole episode about that movie.
We could.
Oh my god, it's some of the most brilliant writing.
Yeah.
Love it. But yeah, you were taking technical practices, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like they go up there,
breaking it down metaphysically.
And on one hand, you have the very technical, clinical doctors, and then you have all the other characters who are kind of the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could argue Settembrini by no means is clinical, but he is very rational because he's a humanist, and so he talks in terms of like logic, and it like what he says makes sense. He kind of follows the clinical line of thought, but he's not clinical in and of himself,
100%. What's your next quote?
So that it's on. It's got one more, but this is about the role of disease in creation, evolution.
Oh, I know this one. This is heavy.
Well, you think you do. You don't really.
Well, I know it, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Would you like me to read it?
You might as well.
Okay. Says, was that which one might call the original procreation of matter only a disease, a growth produced by morbid stimulation of the immaterial? The first step towards evil, toward desire and death, was taken precisely then, when there took place the first increase in the density of the spiritual, that pathologically luxuriant morbid growth, produced by the irritant of some unknown infiltration. This, in part pleasurable, in part a motion of self-defense, was the primeval stage of matter, the transition from the insubstantial to the substance. This was the fall. The second creation, the birth of the organic out of the inorganic, was only another fatal stage in the progress of the corporeal towards consciousness, just as disease in the organism was an intoxication, a heightening and unlicensed accentuation of its physical state. The life was nothing but the next step on the reckless path of the spirit dishonored, nothing but the automatic blush of matter, roused to sensation and become receptive for that which awaked it. Off of page 286.
They allude to something like that. One of Settembrini's and Nafta's arguments or debates is talking about stuff like that, where Nafta's point is, I guess you would rather rewrite and take away the book of Genesis, because what matters to Nafta is only the spiritual element of man, right? That's I think that's part of Nafta's, contradictory views. Because he became a Jesuit. That is what matters to him,
even though he was a Jew.
And you have the form of matter, you have the form of mass over time, and you and I have 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, and and a nose. But what makes us human? The fact that I can smell how great that candle is, or the act of smelling, or the perception of the smell, and it makes me think of a certain form of theology where it breaks down the elements of your perception, and that's all God is. This process theology, where scientific things that we take for granted, break those down to a metaphysical level, what exactly that is.
Okay.
It's so heavy and heady.
Yeah. Beautiful
stuff. The guy's name was Whitehead. That's his last name. Read a book of his like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff.
Do you think he had a
white head?
A lot of acne growing up. A lot of whiteheads.
Probably.
Sorry, I know we're in a serious conversation, but when you said whitehead, I just couldn't resist.
You could. I had a German teacher named Frau Whitehead. Wonderful teacher. But
like with this quote, I think like we said, it gets to really, I think the big debate. You could say in the book, in society in general, are we just physical? Are we spiritual? Or are we both? I think most people would conclude that we're both. It also talks about is disease in one sense how we evolved as a species. For example, life experience over time. I mean, I don't believe in evolution as to how we got here, but I believe in evolution as a process. And historically, yes, our life expectancies have gotten longer. And is that due to disease and our bodies figuring out how to overcome that, or as disease being an example for example, scientists to study it and figure out how to remedy it? I would say yes in that regard.
I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting you believe in evolution. You should look at zoology and science, any sort of science, I guess, and you can see the pattern of growth through species. And I think we're of nature, and we're also apart from nature because we have cognizance. But I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that. I don't think it's blasphemous to admit that there's measurable patterns that create life and how life adapts to its surroundings.
I would agree with you in theory. I mean, granted, I don't think it's blasphemous to believe in evolution. I think it's, there's a lot of Christians that believe in evolution. I just happen to be one of them. Especially because, I read a book, because do we want to go down this road?
I mean, the people love this. That's the
thing. Okay. So we'll try to keep this to a minimum. I want to preface this by no means am I an expert, but the guy was saying, because I believe one of the premises of evolution is that we evolve through gene mutations, right?
That's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, but what he was saying is if you really study it, every species that has a gene mutation it's not a positive one. So, like, for example, if a bird has a negative mutation, it's going to get killed.
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
Exactly, and so if we are to believe that we evolve through gene mutations, it's not possible, because if every being that has a mutation is automatically weaker and gets consumed by a stronger, how would we progress to the point we got now? Anyways, that's one of the reasons I don't believe in evolution. But and I realize there's evidence to counteract that. I'm not an expert by any means, but I read that and I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes, I like to think about the concept of the uncanny valley. You're aware of that, right?
No.
So the uncanny valley is a theory of perception where something appears to be human, but we can tell that it's not. There's something in our brains when something's not quite. That's why when we look at
Bigfoot.
No, not really. But you see these scientists and engineers working on robots, and they have these androids. They're starting to have they look lifelike, they say, but you can see that and be like, no, I can see the mechanisms working between that. That's not real, and it's kind of frightening to us. So that tells me, through years of hunter-gatherers, generations of standing for yourself, or that something in us recognizes when something isn't human, and when you have to run or fight. Though that instinct in itself proves to me that evolution is a working practice, and just because we can't see it play out instantly doesn't mean it's not there. You have the two different types of subhuman species. You have like the Neanderthals. You look at pictures that's maybe why you recognize that as a survival instinct of, that's not one of mine. But there's, I find that interesting. It's just a very contradictory view. But
well,
I'll allow it.
To your view, just like our political views are very contradictory too.
I will say this: one of the reasons why I like this book is that it cements yours and I's friendship here.
That is true. That is true.
The two main characters that are always at odds.
Always, yes. Always button heads, yet coming back together.
It's kind of nice to have that on paper somewhere. You're like, oh yeah,
we are moving the world forward. We argue, but yet come back together.
I hope I didn't scare anybody or bore anybody. I got a quote.
Okay.
And this is interesting because it's in italics. It's one of the only moments in this book where the font changes.
I wonder if
and it's because he's speaking in French too. At this point, Frau Chauchat. He doesn't know her as Claudia yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit me with it.
Morality? It interests you, does it? All right. It seems to us that one ought not to search for morality in virtue, which is to say, in reason, in discipline, in good behavior, in respectability, but in just the opposite. I would say, in sin, in abandoning oneself to danger, to whatever can harm us, destroy us. It seems to us that it is moral to lose oneself and let oneself be ruined than to save oneself. The great moralists have never been especially virtuous, but rather adventurers in evil, in vice, great sinners who teach us as Christians how to stoop to misery. You must find that all very repugnant. And that is Frau Schott, her philosophy. And we realize this becomes more into play when another character is introduced later on in the novel, Mynheer Peeperkorn, who is essentially like Dionysian philosophy of life.
Yeah.
Everything to its, maybe it's Epicurean, but it's like pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. I'm going to do everything. And this might not look structured for society's view of how to be a good human being, but it makes me feel good, yet we call it a sin. When I read that, I was like, wow, that's what's the term? Not what is it? When you take pleasure, it's a form of
hedonism.
There we go. That's it. Yeah. Very hedonistic way of viewing life. Do you find that acceptable? If something 100% gives you pleasure, do you find it an okay thing?
It depends on what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, there's a big pastor called, his name's John Piper. He has this term called Christian hedonism. So basically, what it is the idea that we have the most joy when we're in Christ. And so, by engaging in activities that please Christ, we're going to be the most happy. So in that sense, it's Christian hedonism. But, for example, if it's...
kind of like, I think that's pretty much what this quote is. That's what that reminds me of.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that came to mind when you read that, to me, was virtue signaling. Because, like, people who proclaim to be the most moral are inevitably the least moral.
Yeah, well, when I read this, I instantly thought of someone like Ben Franklin. Who, like, people...
Yeah. Well, I mean...
I'm going to say people like you, but, like, people who are so... patriotic, right? Or they like take someone like him and revere him, but he was a flawed individual who loved his women and loved his and he gave into these pleasures when he wasn't off flying kites.
To be fair, one, he was not a Christian; he was an agnostic,
right?
So, I think, kind of go into our conversation a few episodes ago about, separating the art from the artist. Hashtag I still love Arcade Fire. If you get that reference, you're a trooper. But it's like, yes, he loved his women. He wasn't a Christian. He made great contributions to this country. So I think you have to look at people... not holistically. You look at them almost compartmentally. Like, all right, well, I like this part about him, but I don't like that part. It's like humans are not simple.
I think,
there's a lot of components.
I will come back to that later on because it's that word, that little word there, that this whole book spends 800 pages destroying that one word. And I love that. But I think Claudia's philosophy here is that you only find a man through his weaknesses. I think she lives her life pretty much thinking that all men, or man in general as a species, is inherently evil. And she does not respect structured wise or anything like that. And I think that's probably why Settembrini doesn't like her as well, because they come from two different classes. Like Settembrini is a bourgeoisie view of humanism and creating a structure of life through bourgeois ideals, and then you have Nafta, who is I guess he's a communist.
Yeah, I think the video I listened to said he was a socialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's based off Lucas, big Marxist.
Yeah.
I read a couple of his stuff, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But also flawed. Individual, a satirical version of that guy.
Yeah.
And if you have any writings you would like to send me of Lucas, George.
Yeah.
Please send my way, because from the excerpts I've read, I find it fascinating, just stimulating. If I agree or don't agree with it or not, I'm not promoting his ideals. But if there's somebody if you want to send it to the Instagram, Once Upon a Tome, I would love to.
Or you can send it into the X account, Once Upon a Tome 22, or our email, onceupontome22@gmail, and I will forward it on to Beau.
Everything's Once Upon a Time 22, so just find us there.
Yeah.
I would love it. If you have any recommendations, please send us our way.
At first I thought you were talking to me about that. I was like, I've never read Lucas.
No. Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah.
Your next quotes.
All right, so the next section, I got 5 quotes on death.
Oh, my Lord, okay.
All right, they're all a lot shorter, though. First one's very, very short. It's only a single sentence. Single question, actually. And it says, why delay by these torturing and costly artificial expedients a death absolutely certain to supervene?
Well, that's part of Hans's, anxiety. There's moments, I've said this last episode, where he gets so overwhelmed with death, or with, maybe not change, but when things he thinks are disintegrating in the moment. But then he also will go on and say, death isn't part, or it's a separation. It's something you have to experience things in order for it to exist. Mm-hmm. And since death is without, we will know death by no means. We can't conceive it, so it doesn't actually exist. It's just a natural step.
Yeah.
I
think the one reason I wrote this down or typed it up was it's this issue is still going on to this day.
Yeah.
You'll have people who, someone in their family suffers some grave injury or whatever, stroke, heart attack, car accident, and they know they're not going to survive, but yet they try every single thing possible to stretch out their loved one's existence, even if that person's not even conscious.
Right.
And so, death has 100% success rate in history. And so it's just the philosophical question, okay, why do we do these things knowing that, one, the quality of life for the person is not going to be good, and the same end result's going to be there?
Yeah. That's a whole other debate unto itself, is the morality of, that whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It's heavy.
Okay.
So I really loved the whole opening of chapter 6, titled Changes.
Okay, I might have quoted that, so I will make a mental note.
Okay, so this is the opening paragraph here, okay? What is time? A secret, insubstantial and omnipotent. A prerequisite of the external world. A motion intermingled and fused with bodies existing and moving in space. But would there be no time if there were no motion? No motion if there were no time? What a question. Is time a function of space or vice versa? Or are the two identical? An even bigger question. Time is active. By nature, it is much like a verb. It both, end quote, ripens, end quote, and, end quote, brings forth. And what does it bring forth? Change. Now is not then, but here is not there. For in both cases, motion lies in between. But since we measure time by a circular motion closed in on itself, we could just as easily say that its motion and change are rest and stagnation. For the then is constantly repeated in the now, the there in the here. Moreover, since despite our best desperate attempts, we cannot imagine an end to time or a finite border around space, we have decided to, quote, think of them as eternal and infinite, in the apparent belief that even if we are not totally successful, this marks some improvement, but does not, the very positing of eternity and infinity, imply the logical, mathematical negation of things limited and finite, the relative reduction to zero. Is a sequence of events possible in eternity, a juxtaposition of objects in infinity? How does our makeshift assumption of eternity and infinity square with concepts like distance, motion, change, or even the very existence of a finite body in space? Now there's a real question for you. So, again, 3 things started to change in society. 3 big questions.
Yeah. I had that quote too.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll knock that out. 3 big questions that came about during the making of this novel. How to produce something new at the perceived endpoint or decline of culture. Okay? How to take up a position at all if they become insecure. And these 3 concepts here on question 2.
Okay.
The theory of relativity, Einstein.
Yep, because that was going on at the time.
God is dead, Nietzsche.
Yep.
Big at the time, especially in Germany. Yep. Remember.
Yeah.
Hitler took Nietzsche to the extreme. And
he did.
Warped the entire meaning of Nietzsche.
Yeah. And I think it's important to get out there because most people, when they hear, Nietzsche said God is dead, that he was saying that there is no God. All he was saying was society had gotten to the point where essentially God was dead in people's minds, and he knew something had to fill that void.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, I wanted to get that out there because I know, actually, I guess if you're listening to this, you probably already know that, but if this is your first time tuning in, we got to clarify that.
Yeah. And then the third of sub thing, Freudian theories of the self. Yeah. Now, in hindsight, Freud was a loser. A lot of psychologists kind of like defeat Freud's theories, but they're important.
I think,
I'm more of a Jungian.
Yeah. Big picture in psychology, yes, most of his theories have been debunked, but what he did was bring about the idea that our subconscious tells us things. Big picture. Right. And that's what more psychology is more about these days.
Right. And so then the third question is how to represent any kind of wholeness or totality if all that remains are only in, quote, broken images, as in T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland.
Yeah.
Right. So those are kind of like how to question every philosophical notion of this book. So if you're going to go out and read this book, go to those 3 questions. You can find them on Wikipedia, and that will help you kind of decipher exactly what Mon's internal monologue is this whole time. Those are the questions that go through his mind, because all of these things that we were told will never go away, socially, culturally, have changed. In science, the universe has changed its theory, its order of balance, right? We thought that the sun, we didn't think that we moved around the sun. We thought the sun moved around us, and then Copernicus came around and was like, no. Yeah. That ain't it at all. And then people thought, the map was, if you go to the horizon, you'll fall off. And everyone was like, no.
I mean, there's still people that believe that.
Yeah, they're freaking morons.
Yeah.
The whole destruction, the de-evolution of society.
Yeah.
Right there. And that's kind of like, how do we know time? Time's the undefeated heavyweight champ.
Well, I think time is... You could argue time is like gravity. You can't actually prove gravity. You can prove its effects, but no one's ever actually discovered gravity.
You can't really see it. It's just a thing that...
Yeah.
You can see the terms of the apple falling from the tree. Yeah. That's gravity there.
Yeah.
But you can't get like a 3D, 5D...
Yeah, you can't weigh it.
Microscope and see the... Maybe you can now.
That's gravity. No, I don't think so. I mean, as far as I'm aware... We have not discovered gravity. Like, before I said what I'm saying, like I said before, we know it's a theory that turns out to be true, but in terms of gravity in and of itself, we can't see it. We can't. I guess you could say we feel it, but
it's all very Hegelian stuff here. Right now, we're just arguing semantics, just because we label something.
And we're trying to use semantics to clarify our thoughts.
Yeah. That's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I'm trying to say, though? Like, we can only know time through our fear of it, our understanding retrospectively of it, and the fact that we're here now.
Yeah.
That's why I love, like, Buddhism is like one of my favorite like philosophies of life. It's because it only matters here in the present, here now. You know. Yeah. If you worry, you suffer twice.
It's true. Until you get to the end and you realize you're wrong.
Touché, pussycat.
You want me to continue on? You want to go? I feel like we went from death to time and
it's your turn.
Go back to death. All right.
Back to death.
Says this is on page 458 of my book. Actually, before I read that, when you were reading yours, I realized because I had the same quote too, but they were like very different words. Because we different translations.
Translations. Mine's
reminds me of
John E. Woods. I think mine's more.
Reminds me of like when I'm sitting in church service and whoever's talking is reading from a different translation of the Bible. Is like kind of follow along, but
yeah, I find that stuff fascinating.
All right, so this says, quote, "What barbarism! The fear of death went back to a very low cultural stage, when violent death was the rule, and its horrors thus became associated with the idea of death in general. But now, thanks to the development of hygiene and the increase in personal security, a natural death was the rule, a violent one the exception. Modern man has come to think of repose after exhaustion of his powers as not at all dreadful, but normal and even desirable. No, death was neither specter nor mystery. It was a simple, acceptable, and physiologically necessary phenomenon. To dwell upon it longer than decency required was to rob life of its due."
Yeah, I mean, it's people worrying about externalities of death.
Yeah.
And then realize that we do all these preventative measures to stop our bodies from decomposing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right, decay starts at birth.
Yeah, I mean, you start dying when you're born.
Yep.
But I think what I like about that is it's basically just kind of along the lines of people change, society change, and whereas really it's a modern thing to not expect a violent death. Up until even 100. Probably 125 years ago. I'd say 1900. Even then, hospitals weren't that great. Yeah. It's like.
Well, as Barron's kind of proves, is that like the only reason they're all up there is because they're, tuberculosis is such a big deal.
Well, that
Barron's in of himself, Sembrini doesn't respect him as a man of science.
No.
And it kind of proves that, or maybe it doesn't prove at all, but like people suspect that Barron's has no flipping idea of what he's doing.
Yeah.
I kind of want to skip around because my next quotes are about Sembrini and NAFTA, and I feel like we can discuss that for a long time.
Do you want me to read my last three on death, or want to skip them, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, this one says, "On with the dance," NAFTA mocked. "Don't let them make too much of the funeral rites. Don't let them pay too much respect to such a simple fact as death. But without that simple fact, there would never have been either architecture, nor painting, culture, nor music, poetry, nor any other art."
I love that.
Yeah, because if we're going to be honest, most great art comes out of pain.
Sure, but I think the motivating drive to create the art is the thing we must focus on. And I'm paraphrasing a quote by my all-time favorite director, and like somebody that I've just pretty much idolized since I was like 17.
Yeah.
As how to conduct yourself, or in terms of being an artist, being a person. It's kind of been really weird for me the past few days, and like I've wanted to like put a post on our Insta about it, but I can't like bring myself to accept it. I haven't felt like this since Prince and Bowie died, so there's no physical reality that connected me or David Lynch, but like his absence is weighing heavy on me. But he said something like that where it's like, I mean, sure, like you experience things, and pain is something that we can write about, but like what's beautiful is the motivation to pick yourself up and have the drive to write it, like that, the positive emotion through art is what makes it great. And we have a friend who's the same way, so I think sometimes people this is gonna get me a lot of heat, but people mythologize Kurt Cobain because he was in pain, right? I mean, people, like, we have students that, I mean, I dealt with this yesterday, idolize Kurt Cobain because of the way that he went out.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the troubling part, is that people refuse to see the actual reality of the circumstance.
Yeah.
And it's just like this myth-making legend of his, and it's kind of, I mean, I love Nirvana, I love grunge music, but I mean, these are tragic stories, and we kind of lose the bigger picture.
Well, I think, especially in like the culture we live in now, it's like everyone wants to be a victim. One, to set themselves apart, to not be like normal. Apparently, normal is a bad thing these days. And then two, so they don't to shirk responsibility. I think
as humans, we strive for narrative, as we
want to explain things.
And through the explaining, we victimize ourselves. But I think most people probably have a good head on their shoulders. I think some of them, I don't know what I'm saying. I just find it. I'm in agreement to a point, I would say. I don't know. I've talked to this with friends about it. It's just like. Kurt Cobain was an amazing artist. So I'm not saying that his whole legacy in general is unimportant. It's just the fact that we focus on the wrong aspect of his life.
Well, it's like that. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix.
That's the thing. My mom always told me, because as most people know, I'm a huge Morrison fan. I'm a huge Doors fan.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
Doors shirt.
They came on the radio last night at the restaurant. I was like, man, I always forget how good these guys are.
Love it. And when I was like 18 years old, I looked like fat Jim Morrison.
You had long hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
I need a picture of this.
it was groovy, man.
Yeah.
But my mom always said, like, think about what he could have done.
Yeah.
If he didn't always give in to his vices.
Yeah.
And didn't die the way that he died. It's like, isn't there a point to that?
Yeah.
And as a kid, you want to believe in the pain of an artist, but
objectively, you don't want to be in pain.
No one wants to be in pain.
If you're out there listening, and you're wondering who David Lynch is, going back to a few minutes ago, great director. Watch Twin Peaks. It's one of the greatest series ever created. It literally combines every single genre.
Yeah.
And like seamlessly.
The reason we have TV the way that it is now is pretty much because of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
The structure.
Yeah.
In terms of cliffhangers. And pretty much all he wanted to do was make fun of soap operas. Because the only things doing that at the time were soap operas.
And what's crazy is, that ended in what, 91? It was 1991?
Something like that, yeah.
And then it took probably a solid, I would say, when did Breaking Bad come out?
2008?
Yeah, so probably a solid 15, 16, even 17 years till TV formats caught up to him.
I would also wager in the early 2000s, The Sopranos was also like, that's what we want to do. But yeah, 100%. Also, most indie music is influenced by, like, the whole dream pop genre came from, like, Cocteau Twins and Twin Peaks. Like, you wouldn't have Beach House.
No.
One of the most beautiful, bands of our time, I think.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Would you like me to continue on?
Well, we're talking about Lynch now. I kind of want to talk about my dream quotes real quick. And we mentioned Freud, so we might as well.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Let me break this down into 2 quotes. So this is the blizzard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got 2 quotes from this one. When Hans is in the blizzard and then he then goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And this is the...
And somehow doesn't die of frostbite.
Yeah. And this is the only time in the novel where, like, the whole philosophy is from, like, a non-measurable place. Like, the only reality that it is, you know, internal for Hans.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else is, you know, external philosophies, I guess. People, children of the sea and sun, were stirring and resting everywhere. Intelligent, cheerful, beautiful, young humanity, so fair to gaze upon. And at the sight, Hans Castorp's whole heart opened wide, painfully, lovingly wide. And then on page 484 for me, the opposite happens. He then comes upon 2 old women, or hags, I guess, witches he would call them, dismembering a child held above a basin, tearing it apart with their bare hands in savage silence. Hans Castorp could see pale blonde hair smeared with blood. They devoured it piece by piece, the brittle little bones cracking in their mouths. I'm also a sucker for a little alliteration, so like the brittle little bones, I just love how that comes around.
I wonder if that was an alliteration in German. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Cracking in their mouths, blood dripping from their vile lips. Hans Castorp was caught frozen in the gruesome, icy spell. He wanted to cover his eyes with his hands and could not. He wanted to flee and could not. This is what I highlighted. They went on about their grisly work, but they had seen him now and shook bloody fists and damned him soundlessly with the filthiest, lewdest curses of his hometown dialect.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, the last 2 words there, hometown dialect.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack with that because it's the only point where his views are symbolic. Everything else he wants to try and explain to people. Yeah. But you actually get the inner workings of his mind when he's at his weakest physically in a blizzard, trying to fight off death, you know. And it's kind of like his fear of it. It starts out beautiful. It's paradise.
Well, going back to like Freud, I mean, I'm sure people can interpret that like, is he ashamed of his hometown? Like, does he have a very low view of himself?
He must, because he has a low view of work. He doesn't want to work. That's part of the reason why he decides to go and visit, Joachim. Or was it Joachim?
I believe it's Joachim. That's what I heard.
That's what I kept saying in my head. But Joachim is, he doesn't want to start his apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. You know, and he comes from a pretty big, line of nobility and bourgeois society, and he doesn't want to really be a part of that. But he also, his parents both died, and then his grandpa died. And he's
surrounded by death.
Yeah.
Surrounded by death in his hometown, and surrounded by death in the Sanatorium.
And then he's surrounded by death in its most vile form.
Yeah.
At the end. That whole the whole snow part, once you get well, I can't say the whole snow part, because then he starts breaking down like snowflakes. So that part, but once you get to the dream part, I had to go back and reread it after like a half page, because like, wait, what the heck's happening now? Mm-hmm. And then I went back and reread it. I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's the first time Mon posits anything, philosophically through, that kind of experience of dreams. I just didn't expect it. It came out of nowhere because I was so used to him being so clinical. About
and life. then to get into a passage that's so like flowy, you're like, whoa, where'd this come from?
Yeah, 100%.
Which honestly, like objectively, that's when you know you're reading a great writer, when they can go from one style to another.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. And the narrator this whole time it's an omniscient narrator.
Yeah.
So it's highly critical of Hans, but yet it empathizes with him in certain areas. So you're aware that the narrator is addressing us and our feelings towards Hans. It is a weird manipulation of your senses.
That's genius.
Because you kind of take pity on Hans.
Yeah.
Because it opens up with like he's a simple guy. So you're like, oh yeah, he doesn't understand.
He's just a shipbuilder.
Yeah, my good engineer. Yeah. Well, what is your next quote about?
Kind of goes along with that. I mean,
okay.
We're still in the death section.
All right, let's go for it.
You want to hear this transition?
Mm-hmm.
So Hans didn't die in the dream, but we're going to talk about death here. It says, it is a fact that a man's dying is more the survivor's affair than his own. Whether he realizes it or not, he illustrates the pertinence of the adage, so long as we are, death is not, and when death is present, we are not. In other words, between death and us there is no rapport. It is something with which we have nothing to do, and only incidentally the world and nature. And that is why all living creatures can contemplate it with composure, with indifferent, unconcerned, and with egoistic irresponsibility.
That was the quote I was thinking of earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Boom. Boom. All right, next one?
Yep.
So this is the last and longest quote I have about death. So this was Barron's, I believe, talking to Hans about Joachim as he was dying. Because Joachim was asking about, is it be painful and all that. And so Barron said, quote, he will sleep a good deal at the end, and his dreams will be pleasant. I think I can promise you that. Even if he shouldn't go off in his sleep, still it will be a short crossing. He'll scarcely notice. You may rely upon it. It's so in the majority of cases at bottom. I know what death is. I am an old retainer of his, and believe me, he's overrated. Almost nothing to him, of course. Almost nothing to him. Of course, all kinds of beastliness can happen beforehand, but it isn't fair to count those in. They are as living as life itself, and can just as well lead up to a cure. But about death, no one who came back from it could tell you anything, because we don't realize it. We come out of the dark and go into the dark again, and in between, like the experiences of our life. But the beginning and the end, birth and death, we do not experience. They have no subjective character. They fall entirely into the category of objective events, and that's that. Kind of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember my birth. I'm not going to know my death.
I find it interesting. He's so full of himself that he's just like, I am its container. He's the container of death.
Yeah. I don't know if he's full of himself when he's saying that, or he's just saying it because he's seen a lot of death and dealt with it. It's kind of like,
maybe.
You know me. I listen to a lot of finance. Well, just one finance podcast. But one of their lines is, you only have one retirement. We've done hundreds, if not thousands. So it's kind of like that equivalent, Like doctors, they see death all the time. Doctors,
right.
Firefighters, cops. More so doctors because they're actually able to treat people. But so they know the process a lot more than you and I do.
They would know how to cope with it, and I think that's what Barron's is probably saying. Is I can deal with this by ignoring it, essentially.
Yeah, essentially because there's no reversing it. Almost treat it as a neutral thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is just what happens in life. You're born, you live, you die.
Mm-hmm. Work, or it's at birth, school, work, death. It's a song.
Yeah.
I think it's by the Dictators.
Okay.
Anyway.
Is the lead singer Sacha Baron Cohen?
No, I wish. It kind of looks like him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so.
But that was my last quote about death. So
I think some of my next quotes are about Settembrini and NAFTA.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up. I just quick highlight here.
Yep.
Of NAFTA. He was a revolutionary of reaction. I like that little tidbit there. And then later on 453, the two of them, eye to eye, are alone together in a way that two people are alone in only one other similar circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
The one receptive, the other active. And they share a secret that will unite them forever. They belong together. So there's a balance between these two because they
mm-hmm.
represent two extremities of philosophy and, how to conduct oneself.
Yeah.
So they don't seem like they go together, but...
Kind of like you and me.
Yeah. The point of their whole thing is to balance each other out.
Mm-hmm.
506 I'm looking for. This is the Good Soldier.
Oh, yeah. That was a long chapter.
Yeah, that was a great one, too.
Yeah.
There's a couple here. There's a lot.
Did I just see that you were just like...
Emma did those.
Oh, that's... Wait. Flip the other page. Were you just like coloring the entire top with a blue highlighter?
Oh, no. It's on my Post-it.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't actually do
it. Okay. I was like, you're just coloring above in that blank space between
I like making my books, look like I've studied and cracked them open, but I don't color them.
Weathered.
Yeah. I mean, I highlight them.
Like,
I don't.
Like leaf by leaf when he gives his reviews.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Tolerance becomes a crime when applied to evil.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Remember when we went and saw...
Zone of Interest?
Yeah.
I just finished that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That movie was one of my favorite things last year that we went and saw.
Oh, yeah.
It was astounding.
Well, especially, I think things always, you appreciate a lot more once some time has set in. Because I remember after we saw it, we're like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then we read some analysis of it, and we are like, oh. And then the depth of it really sat in.
Yeah. Like when it opens up and they're casually talking about a more methodical way.
Completely business-like.
Exterminating.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting in the tea room, in the living room, just hanging out.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing. So when I read that, I was like, yep, the banality of evil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's more evil? Then there's the historical component of forces that enslave the conscience. I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's a...
Well, then going back to the Zone of Interest, remember when the guy was swimming with his kids in the river, and then all of a sudden...
Oh, yeah.
All the teeth and jaws and stuff start floating down the river, and he's like, oh, we got to go.
Yep. So it's like, he doesn't want his children to be harmed.
Yeah.
But...
Yet he's gassing millions of...
And it's also a way to, protect his children from the horrors of himself, the regime, and also for him to run away from it. And so his kids never find out what he's doing.
Yeah.
Sickening. Gross. One of the best movies of last year, man. Frick. So this is Settembrini. This is him talking about war.
Mm-hmm.
You are silent, Herr Settembrini said, deeply moved. You and your country allow unconditional silence to reign, a silence so opaque that no one can judge its depths. You do not love the word, or do not possess it or sanctify it, only in a sullen way. The articulate world does not and cannot learn where it stands with you. My friend, that is dangerous. Language is civilization itself. The word, even the most contradictory word, binds us together. Wordlessness isolates. One presumes that you will seek to break out of your isolation with deeds. You will ask your cousin Giacomo. Herr Settembrini had fallen into the habit of calling Joachim Giacomo.
Mm-hmm.
You will ask your cousin Giacomo to step out in front of your silence. And 2, he has slain all unaided, the others his sword have evaded. So I think, Settembrini wants to unify and stop, violence through
dialogue,
amicable dialogue.
Yeah.
Taking a stand against it that way. NAFTA would disagree with him, saying that the only things that matter are good deeds.
Yeah.
And what do your words imply? Because
words without actions are nothing.
Right. And the way that this book is kind of structured is like, just because we're talking semantics here and words, talking about Hegel, these don't matter. We're just calling certain things different. Just because we have a word for it doesn't mean that
it's reality.
Our opponents have the same word. Translations, like certain words we can't translate.
Yeah.
We can have a accurate, as most accurate translation of a certain
term
as possible. But
as a language teacher, there's words and phrases that exist in one language that do not in another.
Right.
It's kind of my biggest frustration with Spanish 1 kids every year. They literally think everything is word for word. Mm-hmm. Because you say something with 3 words in Spanish, there's going to be 3 words in English. It's like, sorry guys, that's not how that works.
English is freaking hard.
No.
Here's another stimulating. Oh my God, no. It's 2 pages. It's a full-on 2 pages.
You can read it. I got long quotes in here.
Oh, my Lord. We're already at an hour 14.
Boom. Hey, this is going to be a long episode. Yeah. We're going Joe Rogan here today.
Oh, boy. Ooh, that's the only thing we'll be compared to him for. Just the length of our podcast.
Boom. Yeah, I feel like he's had authors on his show.
I just
what would you
find him insufferable.
Really?
Yeah, I liked him when
he has
first getting into podcasts, and he wasn't.
He has a variety of people on from all perspectives.
Yeah, he just thinks he knows everything.
See, I think he's pretty humble.
I don't think he's humble at all, and I find him wish-washy.
Yeah.
He just comes off as the only right interpretation of anything is from him, and anything he disagrees with, he just kind of like dumbs it down.
I guess your opinion, not mine, but I think what he does really well is he gives his guests opportunities to explain themselves.
I think certain ones. I've listened to a couple of episodes where he doesn't. I don't know. I also just find his whole jumping ships to certain moments I find pathetic. I can't put it in any other terms. I just find him a pathetic loser.
Okay.
Most of the time. But hey, people like him.
We could go down a can of worms. I love the guy. Just like I love Bill Maher. You hate Bill Maher. I love Dave Rubin. You hate Dave Rubin.
Yep.
So, anyways, we'll chalk it up to just differences.
Yep. All right. Here's my big old section. It's from A Good Soldier.
Okay.
What is this I hear, my good engineer? What rumor has come to my ears? Your Beatrice is returning? Your guide through all 9 rotating spheres of paradise? Well, I can only hope that you will not totally disdain the friendly guiding hand of your Virgil as well. Our ecclesiastic here can confirm for you that the world of the medioevo is not complete if Franciscan mysticism lacks the opposing pole of Thomistic insight. Everyone laughed at all this facetious erudition and looked now at Hans Castorp, who was also laughing and lifting his glass of vermouth to toast his Virgil, which is, said Brainy.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be hard to believe, but the next hour was consumed by the inexhaustible intellectual fracas that grew out of Herr Centobrini's harmless, though flamboyant remarks. For Nafta, in response to what had admittedly been something of a challenge, immediately went on the attack, impugning the Latin poet whom Settembrini, as they all knew, idolized, indeed ranked above Homer, whereas on more than one occasion Nafta had shown a caustic disregard of Virgil and of the Latin poets in general, and promptly and maliciously used this opportunity to do so again. It was solely because he shared the all too charitable biases of his age. He said that the great Dante had taken the mediocre scribbler seriously and had assigned him such an important role in his own epic, a role to which Herr Ludovico probably assigned far too much Masonic significance, when in fact there was nothing of that fawning poet laureate and flunky of the Julians, that so urbane inkslinger and rhetorical show-off without a spark of creativity, whose soul, if he had one, was second-hand at best, who was not a poet at all, but a Frenchman togged out in a full Augustan wig of flowing curls. So he believes, Virgil and anyone who agrees with him is some sort of bourgeois. Like, he connects it with, Augustan wig of flowing curls, right? Like, it's a bourgeois way of thought.
Yeah, pie in the sky.
Yes, 100%. Herr Settembrini did not doubt that the honorable gentleman had means and methods by which to reconcile his office as a teacher of Latin with his disdain for the glories of Roman civilization, though it did seem necessary to remind him that such opinions also put him at variance with the judgment of his favorite era, which not only had not disdained Virgil, but it also, in its naive fashion, rightly honored his greatness by making him a mighty seer and sorcerer. It was all in vain, Nafta responded. The Herr Settembrini appealed to the naivete of those victorious morning years of Christianity, which had only proved its creative force by making demons of those it conquered. Moreover, the teachers of the early church had never wearied of warning people against the lies of the philosophers and poets of antiquity, and in particular against sullying themselves with the lush eloquence of a Virgil. Indeed, the present day, when once again one age was heading for the grave, even as a proletarian age was dawning, was a particularly appropriate time for respecting such sentiments. And as for the rest of his charge, Herr Ludovico could be sure that he, Nafta, pursued his modicum of bourgeois activity to which the former had been kind enough to allude with all due reservatio mentalis, and that he recognized a certain irony in having found a niche in an educational institution devoted to classical rhetoric, a pedagogy whose lifespan even the most sanguine would estimate only in decades. It's a lot there.
Yeah.
There's a lot. You Christians studied them, Settembrini exclaimed. Studied the classical poets and philosophers until you broke out in a sweat, attempted to make their precious heritage your own, just as you used the stones of their ancient edifices for your meeting houses, right? Like early Christianity, they had to hide in Roman and Greek schools. Yeah. Because you were well aware that no new art could come from your own proletarian souls and hope to defeat antiquity with its own weapons. And so it will be again. So it will always be. And you, with your crude visions of a new morning, will likewise have to be taught by those whom, so at least you would like to persuade yourselves and others, you despise. For without education you cannot prevail before humanity, and there is only one kind of education. You call it bourgeois, but in fact it is human. A question of decades until the end of humanistic education? Only good manners prevented Herr Settembrini from breaking into mocking, carefree laughter. A Europe that knew how to perceive its eternal treasures would coolly, calmly proceed with the agenda of classical reason and ignore any proletarian apocalypses that might be envisioned here or there. As to the world's agenda, Nafta sarcastically replied, Herr Settembrini did not appear very well informed about that. A matter that the Italian evidently preferred to take for granted would be the next item on the agenda, whether the classical tradition of the Mediterranean was intended for all humanity, and therefore eternal in human terms, or whether it had not merely been the intellectual fashion and trimmings of one particular epoch, the bourgeois liberal age, which could then die with it. It would be a matter for history to decide, and he recommended Herr Settembrini not let himself be lulled into any sort of certainty that the decision would be rendered in favor of his Latin conservatism. And I would preface this by saying I'm pretty sure that all of this is happening in Nafta's very eloquent and beautiful home.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
What do you think?
There's a lot there.
But you understand what they're both trying to say. They're not trying to.
Yeah.
They're talking about history in different terms.
Yeah.
Settembrini, I believe what he's getting at is that this is all connected, and we're as much as them as they are a part of us. Where Nafta is like, no.
Yeah.
The only reason old Christians met there was because that was the end of the epoch of where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't have any other choice but to go to where their masters created for them.
Yeah.
It wasn't out of respect to that. It was out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It was probably all in vain. That was a lot. I went on for a while.
That's okay. This is a long episode.
I feel like Tarantino. I'm going to make you sit here for 3 hours.
No, I mean, hey, as long as it's good. It's a long book, long quotes.
Yep.
It's kind of Proustian, but it actually makes sense, and doesn't keep going on and on and on.
Because Proust was more talking about experiences.
Yeah.
Or nostalgia, whereas he's talking in depth on terms of philosophy.
Well, it's funny because one of the video I watched, I forget if it was one of the ones you sent me or not. I don't know. For sure, I did not watch the University of Chicago one you sent me. But the other one you sent me, you're talking about how they're comparing Proust and Mann, and how Proust was kind of going internally to explain things, whereas Mann not outwardly things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. I have a long quote.
No, let's go for it.
So, I don't know. This is about the difference between men and women. Do you want to go into that, or do we want to open that can of worms? I don't think it's controversial. It's more observational, but
yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this was Hans was talking to Minor Peppercorn. He goes, quote, "When one thinks how women are made, you smile, you hear a person of my youth and inexperience making general observations on this subject. How dependent a woman's feeling for a man is upon his feeling for her. It is not surprising. Women, if you will permit me so to express myself, are creatures not of action, but of reaction. They do not initiate. They are not inactive in the sense that they are passive. May I, even at the risk of being tiresome, try to follow that a little further? Woman, so far as I have been able to observe, regards herself in a love affair as the object. She lets it come. She does not make a free choice. She only chooses on the basis of the man's having chosen. And even then, I must repeat, her choice is suspect. It is prejudiced by the very fact that she has been chosen, provided, of course, the man is not too poor a specimen, and even so, good Lord, what unalloyed drivel I'm talking. But when one is young, everything seems new and astonishing. You ask a woman, do you love him? And she tells you, he loves me so much, and rolls her eyes up or else rolls them down. Imagine an answer like that from one of us, if you will pardon me putting us in the same category. Perhaps there are men who would answer like that, but they are poor-spirited creatures. Their women wear the breeches, if you will forgive the expression. I should like to know what kind of self-appraisement is at the bottom of the feminine answer. Is it that the woman thinks she owes a man boundless devotion merely because he has conferred the favor of his choice upon so lowly a creature? Or does she see in the man's love an infallible sign of her personal excellence? I've often asked myself these questions when I've been thinking quietly alone. And then Peppercorn responds, primitive, traditional mysteries you touch on there, young man, applying your glib little phrase to the sacred conditions of our existence, responded Peppercorn. Man is intoxicated by his desire. Woman demands and expects to be intoxicated by it. Hence our holy duty of feeling, hence the same in unfeelingness and powerlessness to awaken the woman to desire.
Yeah. That's one of those quotes from a character that I don't think Hans really necessarily respected intellectually. But this is also a man who's like sole understanding of the world is through his own pleasure. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any like I don't. When I remember reading that and thinking like, this is an obviously dumb take by a man who only respects in terms of his love for Claudia.
Yeah. See, on the whole, I would agree with most of that. On the whole, not that there aren't exceptions. Yes, women will go after a man, but I think on the whole, women like to be pursued.
I don't know. I don't think people. I think people. I don't think they want.
That's just my own personal theory.
From experience, I don't think that's how it's been at all.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
people
we go down a rabbit hole with this.
People are just drawn to each other.
They are, but
and you can be responsive to it, or you can.
Yeah.
I don't think gender has anything to do with, how you perceive someone you're infatuated with.
No, but I mean, like I said, there are exceptions. But I think on the whole, there's a reason why most little girls gravitate towards princess films, where the princess is saved by Prince Charming, and every man wants to be that Prince Charming. I do believe there are ingrained differences.
I do believe that those are societal things that are kind of not thrust upon children, but I think that's things that are passed down that you have to identify as this because that's who you are. I don't think that just because you are biologically whatever that's what it has to be like. Like you could be infatuated with anything you want to be. Just because of where you are gender-wise means that you're stuck to this little box of cultural identities. I mean, I find that more harmful than anything. I think I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that I don't think that's what it has to be. I don't think that's what it should be. I think that, the messages that we give to kids saying like, oh, that's you, and that's it's this toxic chivalry, right? Like, of course, everybody, like Mick Jagger says, I'll be your knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
But that is a toxic way of living your life, because you go around thinking you have to frickin' save everybody, but not everybody wants to be saved. You don't have to fix everything. Just be yourself. Just be you. Whatever you are. Yeah. You don't have to be nothing.
Well, I don't think
That's
you have to.
My thing.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another area we disagree.
I just think like most of those identities we thrust upon people are just
I think men and women are hardwired differently. I think God created us that way. That's where you and I would disagree.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So,
definitely.
So,
I think people are wired differently from each other, but I don't think your identity of your gender has anything to do with it. I think it's mainly just who you are.
Yeah.
I hope I'm stating that correctly. It goes with my beliefs that I just don't like,
You don't like being told what to do.
I don't like thrusting identities on people.
Well, that's the thing. I think people in my camp, I think where we feel misconstrued is that I think people on your end think that we're forcing these roles upon people, whereas I think you just look at little kids and they naturally gravitate towards different things, Yeah. So
100%, they do gravitate towards different things.
Yeah. So that's,
And unfortunately, some people are chastised growing up the whole life because then they have to, hide who they are because the status quo says that this is who you are right now. This is what you have to be in the future. And I think that is a reactionary thing. All right.
Next up.
The drudgeries that do on occasion precede death can hardly be credited to him, since they just prove that someone is alive and kicking and may lead back to life and health. But if anyone ever did come back, and they could not tell you much, but if anyone ever did come back, they could not tell you much about death, since we don't actually meet him. We come out of darkness and return to darkness, with some experiences in between. But we don't experience the beginning and the end, birth and death. We are not subjectively aware of them. They exist only in the world of objective events, and that's that.
Yeah, kind of like we were getting back to with Barron's, talking about Joachim's death.
That's why I paused, because I was like, did we just read this? Yeah. These are things that, of course, you can fear and you understand is inevitably coming to you, but I don't remember the memory of being. You
don't remember emerging from your mother's birth canal?
No, not at all. But we are aware that it happened because we're here now.
Yeah.
And death will probably be the same way. I think we'll experience the fleeting moments of life because once the oxygen just starts leaving the brain, you will hallucinate. Like near-death experiences are just hallucinations of lack of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're aware of that, but the moment it goes blip, I don't think you'll experience it. You can't experience that.
It's a mental thing. You're not going to experience physically.
Who's driving the car, the spirit or the body? If my body breaks down, let's get up and get into another car. David Lynch said that.
Yeah.
Kind of. But yeah. Interesting stuff. There's another. He opens up another chapter. Chapter 7 opens up, A Stroll by the Shore. Again. Him, ruminating about time. This time.
Yeah.
On how to narrate it. So not perceiving it.
Is this the quote about the relation between time and music?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe. Can one narrate time? Time as such in and of itself?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking of.
All right. Well, two birds, one stone.
We both had both the quotes about time.
There we go.
Great minds think alike.
Most certainly not. What a foolish undertaking that would be. The story would go, end quote. Time passed, ran on, flowed in a mighty stream, end quote. And on in the same vein. No one with any common sense could call that a narrative. It would be the same as if someone took the harebrained notion of holding a single note or chord for hours on end and called it music. You know, kind of like Lou Reed did.
Yeah.
You know, in the 70s, what Metal Machine music or something like that. It's just like freaking one chord. That's terrible. People excuse it, but I love Lou Reed, but like
that reminds me of what was that composer who like had the silent symphony? Is it John Gates? Oh,
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it.
We studied that, and I took him like a history of music class. Mm-hmm. And it was like, the video of him was just like him walking students along campus, just like conducting a silent symphony. I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I think John Cage.
Oh, yeah, it is John Cage.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in the same camp of people. I think they're in the same, spheres. I like John Cage. Steve Reich is also one of those guys I love.
Yeah.
And, it's just tonal notes that just expand. Or you break the instrument down.
Yeah.
It's literally that, but the bigger picture, he layers that upon layers from the studio. Because a story is like music in that it fills time. Fills it up so nice and properly. Divides it up so that there is something to it. Something going on, to quote. With a melancholy reverence one shows to statements made by the dead, a few casual comments of the late Yoakum, phrases that faded away long ago, and we are not sure if the reader is quite clear just how long ago that was. Time is the element of narration, just as it is the element of life, is inextricably bound up with it, as bodies are in space. It is also the element of music, which itself measures and divides time, making it suddenly diverting and precious. And related to music, as we have noted, is the story which also can only present itself in successive events, as movement toward an end, and not as something suddenly brilliantly present, like a work of visual art, which is pure body bound to time. And even if it would try to be totally here in each moment, would still need time for its presentation. So I think, at the end there is like visual art, movies, you're bound between the constructs of, you have to practice it, you have to perform it and all these sorts of things. But when you experience music, it's more abstract and your brain connects with it differently.
Yeah, well, I mean,
full picture there.
He goes on to say, because I have the very extended version of the quote. He compares
the extended cut.
Yeah, like a 5-minute waltz is 5 minutes, but in a piece of literature, 5 minutes can take entire book.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Hundo percento. That's a good quote, though. I love it.
Yeah.
You have one?
I have a lot. I'm actually kind of getting close to the end.
So am I.
Trying to think what.
Yeah.
What's our timestamp right now?
1:38.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay. Okay. So I got a couple quotes here, decent size.
Okay.
I'd say title. And the category I put them in was the relationship between God and man.
Oh, I like it.
Yep. All right. So first one. If I might be permitted, NAFTA interpolated, to introduce a little logic into the premises, I should state the question thus. Either Ptolemy and the schoolmen were right, and the world is finite in time and space, the deity is transcendent, the antithesis between God and man is sustained, and man's being is dual, from which it follows that the problem of this soul consists in the conflict between the spiritual and the material, to which all social problems are entirely secondary. And this is the only sort of individualism I can recognize as consistent, Or else, on the other hand, your Renaissance astronomers hit upon the truth, and the cosmos is infinite. Then there exists no suprasensible world, no dualism. The beyond is absorbed in the here, the antithesis between God and nature falls, man ceases to be the theater of a struggle between two hostile principles, and becomes harmonious and unitary. The conflict subsists merely between his individual and his collective interest, and the will of the state becomes, in good pagan wise, the law of morality, either one thing or the other. It's pretty much either there's a God or there's man. Either God rules or man rules. Mm-hmm. You know.
I remember that quote. I wonder if I highlighted that. I'm not quite sure. That's heavy stuff. But, I mean, that's also the crux of the novel, is like these dueling philosophies, or just dueling, you know,
and really exploring
schools of thought.
Whether you can synthesize the two or not.
Yeah.
You know?
And we see how man ends it.
Yeah.
The answer is apparently no.
Or at least not easily.
Yeah.
But
then again, it's weird. Yeah. Contradictory. This whole book.
Yeah.
That's one of the.
Well, I think so the book itself, I don't believe is contradictory. I believe it presents the contradictory nature of humans in general. How, you know, all of our thoughts can be contradictory. Mm-hmm. You know.
Let's see. I have a quote here, page 555. I believe he's with Peppercorn here. Hans Castorp saw something like a flicker of terror at that crime, that one great sin, that unpardonable transgression to which he had alluded, and which, in trying to fathom its horror, he had condemned to silence with all the spell-binding energy of a vague but commanding personality. Objective, matter-of-fact terror, Hans Castorp thought, but personal terror too. Something to do with his own life, with the regal man himself. What Hans Castorp saw flickering there for just a moment, it seemed, was fear. Not minor, everyday fear, but panic and dread. And despite all the reasons for his hostile feelings towards Frau Schatz's majestic traveling companion, Hans Castorp had by nature too much respect for others not to be shaken by what he saw. My personal view, I think Hans is having a panic attack, and I think he's had a few here and there, but I just like that quote because it's like, I mean, that's kind of when I have suffered my existential anxiety, panic and dread. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like there's a everyday fear, you know, that I'd have, like, oh, I don't want to mess up dinner.
Yeah.
Right. That's just in the moment, like, oh, I just don't want to mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, he sees through Peppercorn's whole philosophy, and he doesn't respect it. But he understands that everyone else enjoys, so he's just going to sit there and observe it. And that's kind of Hans's flaw, is that he does have his own philosophy. It's just that when he wants to talk about it,
he's not confident.
He's either not confident enough in it, or he's just, pontificating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if he actually held a view, he would fight for it. Like Nafta and Settembrini do, but he never does. Mm-hmm. He only just wants to be accepted for appearing to be a certain way. Yeah. And then my next one isn't until 641. That was 555.
Okay. So I have a few quotes. We talked about the last time, like the idea in the book that, well, it's not an idea Mon presents, but I think it's discussed among the characters how, like, is suffering and illness actually virtuous or is it not? So I had a few quotes on that, but because we already talked about it, I just want to read one of them. This is from page 454. It says, Nafta, continuing, derived the reverence which the Christian Middle Ages paid to physical suffering from the fact that it acquiesced on religious ground in the sight of the anguish of the flesh. For the wounds of the body not only emphasized its sunken state, they also corresponded in the most edifying manner to the envenomed corruption of the soul, and thereby gave rise to emotions of true spiritual satisfaction, whereas blooming health was a misleading phenomenon, insulting to the conscience of man and requiring to be counteracted by an attitude of debasement and humility before physical infirmity, which was infinitely beneficial to the soul. Quis me liberabit de corpore mortis suis, Who will deliver me from the body of death, of this death? There spoke the voice of the Spirit, which was eternally the voice of true humanity. So basically, you know, back in the day, it's like, oh, I want to suffer. Like, it's a good thing, you know? Whereas...
Sure, that's what all the martyrs were telling themselves until the point that they were actually about to die.
Well, you don't die for something you don't believe in. I'm just saying, like, the idea that you make yourself, like, unhealthy and make yourself as poor as can be on your own just because you get that spiritual high, like, that's not good.
Yeah, no. That's not the point of life.
And so, you know, like, you hear all those stories from the Middle Ages of, like, you know, they still go on to an extent to this day, but, you know, guys who would only eat, like, a piece of lettuce a day, or, you know, like, the flagellants, they would beat themselves on the back with whips. It's, like, completely unnecessary things, but they did them because they felt that living like that would bring them closer to God, you know?
I'm a big, I love the St. Louis Art Museum.
Yeah.
So, like, my parents were both in art school, and so, like, growing up as kids, we would go there, like, quite often because it was free.
Yeah.
You know, I remember having discussions with my mom and dad, and there was a certain painting. I don't know the painter off the top of my head, but he starved himself for extended periods of time while painting to change the way that he perceived colors. And it's a small one. I find it fascinating. I took a picture of it once with an old camera. Okay. Because I thought it was, like, beautiful. But the story behind it, it's like, well, then he ended up dying of starvation. Yeah. You know, like,
completely unnecessarily.
Yeah. But then again, with that picture, it just encapsulates so much in that little frame. It looks kind of like a Van Gogh. Yeah. But I mean,
what would fit? Van Gogh did cut off his ear.
Poor guy. But he found so much pleasure. I think, like, the only time he was ever really happy in life was the act of painting. Yeah. And everything else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's another esoteric quote here. Let us put it this way. An object created by the human spirit and intellect, which means a significant object, is, quote, significant, in that it points beyond itself, is an expression and exponent of a more universal spirit and intellect, of a whole world of feelings and ideas that have found a more or less perfect image of themselves in that object, by which the degree of its significance is then measured. Moreover, love for such an object is itself equally significant. It says something about the person who feels it. It defines his relationship to the universe, to the world represented by the created object, and, whether consciously or unconsciously, loved along with it. It's kind of like how the experiential, you know, force of seeing the world, things created upon it, and how we feel towards it. Yeah. You know, Hegelian, some would say, I guess if I had to try and describe it, in a sense it would be that. Maybe I don't understand Hegel at all. And I would wager that no one does. Yeah. Except for Mr.
Hegel himself.
Hegel, Sadler, and Marx. Yeah. What's my next one? I just have, like, a freaking... Yeah. Wait, no. Wait, yes. Oh, God.
Yes, no, maybe so.
A big one. A big one. I don't know if I want to read it.
Okay. Yeah, I have about
go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot, but I have really two left I want to get to. Well, it's really one, but I can do two if you want. You want me to do one?
Go for it.
All right. So I have one I want to conclude with, but this is kind of the penultimate one. So this deals with kind of spirituality of feelings. So Hans is talking to Meinher, and he goes, I repeat that therein lies our duty, our sacred duty to feel. Feeling, you understand, is the masculine force that rouses life. Life slumbers. It needs to be roused, to be awakened to a drunken marriage with divine feeling. For feeling, young man, is godlike. Man is godlike in that he feels. He is the feeling of God. God created him in order to feel through him. Man is nothing but the organ through which God consummates his marriage with roused and intoxicated life. If man fails in feeling, it is blasphemy. It is the surrender of his masculinity. As cosmic catastrophe, an irreconcilable horror.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of Mann's kind of philosophy, or
basically negating your feelings is a dereliction of duty as a human.
Again, I've said this is like one of my freaking phrases of life is that we are a part of nature and apart from nature.
Yep.
We are the only species right now that is able to recognize and measure our surroundings, the universe, Earth, all of these things, and knowingly rectify or coddle it to our standards.
Yeah.
And no other species of life can do the things that we're able to do. And I think that's what he's getting at is like, and if you go with doing things without feeling any sort of way.
Here's a robot.
Yeah. I would wager a lot of our society today, the people in power, definitely go make decisions based on that. That's just me.
Yeah, I'd say that's just you.
I think people are cold-hearted. Yeah. If you're going to open a grocery store and have a grocery business, you are then in the business of providing essential things in life to people.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a right, it is a given. Because if you starve people, not only are you a fascist, but you are a deplorable human being. That's just my view. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to open up a grocery store, you shouldn't be so selective of where you're putting it because you're providing a service that people do need. If you're bottling water, like a certain big company does, and then refuse to do any sort of philanthropy by giving water to communities you're taking it from, you're an awful spiritual being. To me, I just find that common sense. But then again, I don't understand economics.
Boom. Yep. You and I differ on this, and we've established that in previous episodes, so we won't go down that rabbit hole now, especially this late in the episode.
This is what people have been waiting for.
Yes.
Man. So the Great Petulance was an exceptional chapter. It leads up to the duel. And my last two quotes are about the duel.
Yeah.
You know, like what they're fighting over.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they fighting over? You know what I mean? What was the deciding factor that made them want to finally?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I got so lost in it.
It's just
it wasn't over Claudia. No, it was
the moment Harris Sentembrini introduced the word justice into the conversation, recommending that high principle as the means by which to prevent catastrophes, both domestic and foreign. NAFTA, who only a moment before had declared the spiritual as too good ever to find earthly expression worthy of it, endeavored to cast doubt on the very notion of the spiritual and to revile it. Justice, was that a concept worthy of our adoration? Something divine? An idea of the first order? God and nature were both unjust. They had their favorites, chose to be gracious at random, adorned one man with precarious honors and the next with an easy but ordinary fate. And for the man who would act, for him justice was, on the one hand, a paralyzing weakness, and the very essence of doubt, and on the other hand, it was a trumpet call to reckless deeds. In order to remain within the sphere of morality, man was constantly correcting one meaning of justice with the other. So how could there be anything absolute and radical about the concept? And in any case, who was, quote, just, either on the basis of one given standpoint or on the basis of the other? The rest was liberalism, and no one was going to fall for that nowadays. Justice was, of course, one more empty husk of bourgeois rhetoric, and in order to act, one first had to know, above all else, which justice was meant. The one that gave every man his due, or the one that was meted out equally to all. And so that's what when we describe what justice is. What is justice? Goober, what are you doing? Goober's sitting on Brett's notes, so now I have him at a standoff.
Yeah.
He cannot. Goober's on my side.
Yep. Just covered up my last quote.
She's like, try it.
Give me those eyes.
Goober, hey. She hears me. She doesn't. Dingley, come here.
That's all right.
Come here, baby.
When the time comes, I'll make my move.
But, I mean, that's the crux. Is justice is only as worthy as the society that gives its meaning. Right? So, like, say, I'm part of a working, like, I'm poor.
Yeah.
Justice, in terms of everyone else, the majority, isn't justice for me. It is.
How do you explain that?
I believe, is my personal belief, that crimes, what we call crimes, are acts of desperation. That is a sole motivation. That we are not giving certain qualities to people, and the only way in which they can go about it is by breaking the rules of justice.
So you think people don't have personal agency?
No, I do. But I feel like people are also more a product of their environment. And when your environment isn't given certain qualities that you and I would have, you're going to act in desperate ways. And you will do anything in all means. And that in itself is not justice brought onto you, because you weren't provided with, or I wasn't provided with, the same equality as you or I.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Does
that
make sense? Is that justice is such an umbrella term that you and I have different terms of justice. Some people in our society, specifically American culture, think that retribution is justice. The death sentence. That is a form of justice to a lot of people.
I would agree with that. I'm a big fan of the death penalty.
I am no man's maker. I'm no creator of life. I will not take it.
Okay. That's a fair point.
Systemically, I cannot do that.
Yep.
But that's justice to some people. I think that's murder. You know what I mean?
So even if somebody murdered a family of 5.
Horrible. That is a horrible act. I mean, I'm not going to be on the side of a murderer. But all I'm saying is that my basis, my moralities are based upon,
Yeah, I think we take two different sides. We've established it.
I'm trying to find a specific term so I'm not stuck at a point where I'm saying, like, murdering a murderer is, not. My whole thing is rehabilitation. All my moral fiber is built upon that ideal of rehabilitating someone or rehabilitating acts like that. And that might be a hill to die on, and I will willingly die on it because I understand that people either want help or don't.
Yeah.
And there's so many things about the human psyche that I could not possibly understand. But all of my political and philosophical things is that everyone can be rehabilitated in some form or fashion. Punishment is not justice in ways that we kind of structure. How we're supposed to rehabilitate. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Private jail, that stuff is... Private prisons is immoral to me. But again, my parents would tell me different. They would say I haven't been victimized yet.
I would tell you different too.
But I hope I'm under, getting at like these terms, what...
I mean, I will agree that the idea of justice, it differs based on the society in which you live.
Yeah.
Like some cultures, hey.
He's talking with his hands, Goober.
Yeah. Like different societies have different justice systems because they have different cultural values. I will acknowledge that. But other than that, I think people have their own agency, especially in America. And,
Trying to get her attention.
Yeah. So, without getting into a giant debate, because I'm kind of mentally tapped out at this point, my brain's a little fried. It's over 2 hours, right?
You were at 158.
158, yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is a big page worth of paragraph.
Oh yeah. I mean, I skipped over. I had a ton of quotes that were like freaking a full page. That I was like, all right, we've already touched on that.
So let's just break down the whole. I was not, and I want to warn people.
Yeah.
Spoilers, and if you're not uncomfortable with talks of suicide, then please skip ahead or just back out now. We appreciate you and whatever. Hope the best for you, but I just don't want to make anyone upset. But Nafta is so ticked off at Settembrini for wanting to take the moral high ground.
It came out of the blue.
Yeah, that he just he was so appalled. Like that's not.
Just put the gun to his head.
He's like, that's cowardly, and then shoots himself.
Yeah, which is cowardly.
It comes out of nowhere.
It does. Yeah.
And I was like, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And I reread it 5 times. I was like, oh my god.
What was crazy? It was like. That was it was towards the end of the duel when nothing ended up happening, and he was like, all right. He killed himself.
Yeah, and then it ends, and then you realize pretty much the entire time Hans is there, he is a shadow of his former self.
Yeah.
It affected him so much to see it play out. Someone was willing to die for their own philosophy. Yeah. And he never had the courage enough to stand at face to death.
Yeah.
In order for that. So what does he end up doing in the very end of the novel? He's in World War I.
Yeah.
The greatest depravity of man.
Yeah.
The practice of depravity, right? Just war.
Trenches.
Yes.
Trenches, gas warfare. Yeah.
I'm gonna go to I'll go to the last page here.
Okay.
Because it is interesting. The last couple parts. He pretty much is we see him and he's walking on the bones of a comrade.
Yeah. And I think it's implied that he dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Farewell, Hans Castorp, life's faithful problem child. Your story is over. We have told it to its end. It was neither short on diversion nor long on boredom. It was hermetic story. We told it for its own sake, not yours, for you were a simple fellow.
Yeah.
But it was your story at last, and since it happened to you, there surely must have been something to you. And we do not deny that in the course of telling it, we have taken a certain pedagogic liking to you. Might be tempted gently to dab the corner of an eye with one fingertip at the thought that we shall neither see you nor hear from you in the future. Farewell, Hans. Whether you live or stay where you are, your chances are not good. The wicked dance in which you are caught up will last many a little sinful year yet, and we would not wager much that you will come out whole. To be honest, we are not really bothered about leaving the question open. Adventures in the flesh and spirit, which enhanced and heightened your ordinariness, allowed you to survive in the spirit where you probably will not survive in the flesh. There were moments when as you played king, you saw the intimation of a dream of love rising up out of death in this carnal body. And out of this worldwide festival of death, aka the war, this ugly rutting fever that inflames the rainy evening sky all around, will love someday rise up out of this too?
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Well, I think what struck out to me about that was in the beginning of it when he writes, the story is about you but not for you. It's in a sense, it's, yes, Hans is the main character, but it's more an example of just life, goings on of life, and discussions and ideas, and just life in general,
Yeah. So, Mann believes that man in general is complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the complicatedness that we should be more focused on, not certain aspects, Yeah. And I do believe that Mann, thought that no matter what, what side you must have been on, but the extremes of those sides are what you need to counterbalance on, because you will always be at odds, and it will always end in destruction.
Yeah. And any honest person is going to have views on both sides.
Probably.
Yeah.
So I do believe that was the crux of it.
Yeah.
And we realize that when he calls him a simple person, he's only simple in the sense that he was born into wealth. He was, he could get a job. But it's not a simple thing to be like, I can't do this.
No.
To have such anxiety and dread about, big philosophical questions that the only thing you can do, hey.
am I going to read my last quote if...
Here, I'll grab her. Sorry, people. Just back up a little bit.
Goober is giving me those eyes where it's... Don't really want to get a claw to the lip.
Yeah, she doesn't do it much. All right, here we go.
There we go. Beau's able to pick her up without her clawing at him. Well, she clawed a little bit. It was only at his sweater, not at his face. Yeah, she was pretty close to me. Not going. You know what? I grew up with cats. I like cats, but I know not to mess with that cat.
So I won't be able to hear myself.
Yeah.
With Goober, she's the only two people she will be fine with is Emma and I. But the fact that she was able to sit next to you for that long, she doesn't do that with other people. So you're around enough so she's at least comfortable with you.
Yeah.
But
not enough for me to mess with her.
No, not at all. And she just kind of grabbed onto my sweater and just held on because that's what she kind of holds on to me. So it wasn't like angry. Yeah. It wasn't angry claws. It was just oh, Dad's picking me up. Yeah. She does it. I love her. Yeah. Hey, read your last.
So this is a very, very short one. So Hans goes, he's talking to Meinherr again. I have a quarrel after all, not with Claudia, not with you, Meinherr Peepercorn, but with my lot in general, my destiny. I think everybody at some point in their life will say some form of that to themselves. Like, how did I get here? You know?
Yeah.
I've had that plenty of times.
Yeah. And then you question what's your lot in life? Like, what are you supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And I think people are just easy. It's easy for us to just avoid what it is we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I thought that was probably a good summation of a good representation of the novel.
Yes.
You know?
100%.
Anything else on your end?
Well, I had a few.
Yeah.
Not literary quotes, but just a few, essays and stuff. But
yeah,
we pretty much tackled it.
Yeah, like I said, I had a bunch of quotes I didn't say, but just for brevity.
I hope this is the last time I feel this way towards the book, where the actual feeling of discussing it and reading it makes my head spin. It's a drug.
It's probably not going to be the last time if we continue to do this.
No. But you know what I mean? Like, it's so heady that...
Yeah. Well, I think,
you can't just, talk about this stuff forever. Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful novel.
Yeah.
Would I recommend it to people?
That was my next question.
No.
Really?
I select people, for sure.
Yeah.
But there would have to be a layer of trust. Because you must understand, it's 7 years where nothing happens.
Yeah.
But what actually happens. But it is you have to be devoted to it.
I would recommend it to specific people. Like, for sure, I will tell everyone it's an objectively great novel, but the ones I would recommend reading it is only select few.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be the gatekeeper, be like, oh, you're not worthy of this. It's just
if we're being real, this is not Twilight.
No, and you have to commit not only in terms of how just reading it, but understanding it. Yeah. It's not one of those things where you passively read at all. You need to bring everything, and maybe that's why my equilibrium is so shifted, is because you need to absorb it all.
You need your complete mental faculties.
And the magical thing about it is that you wrestle with your own sense of personal philosophy as you go, because you're seeing your own philosophy, how people or someone from a different time is able to find their own stuff, or their own life. Because as the journey Mon takes is in his own Germany. He went from being devoutly patriotic about his homeland to being highly critical of it and despised it. And he hated fascism and he ran away because he had to. Yeah. So he went from one man being so proud of his heritage to another man being like, this no matter how good it's supposed to be, will lead only to chaos and destruction.
Yeah, for sure.
Great stuff, man. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Yeah, something purely coincidental, though. I'm in the middle of Youth right now, which takes place in the Alps. I was like,
the Youth is so good.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm like, I think 40 minutes into it, but yeah.
I was reading Norwegian Wood not too long. I knocked it out in like 3 days.
Yeah.
But the character Toru is reading the Magic Mountain.
Nice.
Encapsulated with it. I'm like, that's funny. He's like reading it on hours on end. I was like, some days I could only do 10 pages.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to be all right, I don't care where it's at. I just have to stop.
Yep.
Should we tell him what the next one is?
I was going to ask you that. Should we give a little cliffhanger? I think we should announce it.
I do too. I'm excited about it. I've been wanting to read this.
Yeah. I think we've been wanting to read it for a while.
Yeah.
So we're going to do 2666 by Roberto Bolaño.
2666?
Or 2666, however you say it.
I don't know. I'm a big Bolaño fan. I've read By Night in Chile.
Okay.
And it was astoundingly beautiful. It's the kind of prose I like.
Yeah.
Concise, poetic.
Yeah.
Love it.
In fact, it's supposed to arrive today.
Oh, heck yeah, man. I might start it once you leave.
Really? Well, no, we can't start it yet. We have to do an intro episode where we do...
I guess you're right. Dang it.
So, if you're listening to this, it will not be another 3 months to do an episode. Probably, hopefully here in a few weeks.
Yeah. Well
and you know what I was thinking about? I don't know if I should say this out loud. How would you feel about maybe doing an episode every 100 pages or so to get a few more out there? Would that be too much, or you still want to do it? Okay.
We could try it out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there will be 6 episodes.
That's true.
What, 200? Bring it down.
Yeah, that works.
All right. I like it. All right. Well, it's over 2 hours. This might be our longest episode.
Yeah, we had a super long one early on. But I don't know. True. I can't remember how long it was.
We were advised not to do this, but here we are.
You know what, Beau? Nature is calling. It's been calling for a while for me right now.
So, fare thee well, adieu.
Yeah. And hope you're doing well. Happy 2025, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Stay in touch. Reach out to us if you don't like anything we've said.
Yes, please reach out. We'll send you...
or if you want to give us any recommendations or send us anything for us to read.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, please do. I am open to
and
talk.
We'll send you a gift package.
Yeah.
We still have baseball cards.
Baseball cards to give. All right. Take care.
Later.